Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Be a Great Player. My name is Guy and today we're looking at the playable race of Tiefling. This is the horned child of a devil or a demon-pacted human who has been born with this legacy which now will haunt them until the day they die. Or at least may haunt them, depending on the particular campaign setting that your GM is running. Now, Tieflings are fairly unique to Dungeons & Dragons, but this basically will go for any kind of playable race that has had a demonic involvement in the past. It's very clearly labelled that the Tiefling is not a direct result of the demon involvement. It is something that happened in the past, a pact or some kind of conjugation happened with a demon and the ancestor of the Tiefling, and as a result they have been cursed with this appearance of being demonic, as well as certain demonic abilities and powers, which of course carry through. Now, what makes the Tiefling different from the other races, apart from the mechanical advantages and disadvantages, and there are other videos and other channels out there who will look into that. But what makes them specifically different from the other races is the inherent distrust and the almost evil nature that follows the Tiefling as a written race. Now, the half-orc has long been with us in Dungeons & Dragons and in other campaign worlds, of course, but they were kind of shunned, but well, they were just big half-orcs and they had a tragic parentage. On the other hand, Tieflings are actively shunned against. They're watched when they walk into stores, according to the book. Shopkeepers keep a close eye on these Tieflings who are known to be rogues and thieves. The community is actively against them, and they have to form their own little sects or cabals that live together and sort of protect one another. It's an incredibly dark space as a character to be in. It's a persecuted space, and we have plenty of persecution here on planet Earth for you to draw from, whatever group you want to look at. So that, to me, is where we have to start. It's not necessarily with the physical attributes. Those are horns and eye colour and tail and that kind of thing, and we'll get to those in this video, we will. But it's about looking at the headspace that your Tiefling happens to be in. And there's three different zones that you could put your Tiefling into, as far as I can see it. There is the defeated zone. Now, the defeated zone are basically apologists. They're Tieflings who accept that they've had this dark parentage, this lineage from way back when, and they know that they're kind of usually evil and distrusting, and so they basically apologize for it. They slink around in the back. They morose. They've accepted their fate, but they are depressed and saddened by it. Then you get the defiant types. Those are the types who rebel against their nature, and they claim just because I have horns, a tail, no pupils, and I'm inherently red-skinned does not make me evil, does not make me necessarily a thief straight away. And I will do everything I can to try and prove that, as well as have, marches down the street celebrating their tieflingness and all those kinds of wonderful things that people who traditionally have been segregated and persecuted for do once they've achieved liberation, which is fantastic, and it has functions and all those kinds of wonderful things. But if that's what your Tiefling wants to do, then so be it. The third type of Tiefling is the devilish Tiefling. I wanted the D, so it was defiant, defeated, devilish. And the devilish one is the one who goes, well, if you think I'm evil, I might as well make use of that and play up to the fact that I'll steal things. And if I get caught, I'll just say, oh, it was in my nature. I am, by virtue of the horns, evil. So what did you expect? The devilish Tiefling is the one who sets a bad tone for the rest of them and who keeps the myths alive that Tieflings are inherently all self-centered little demons running around trying to, well, basically get away with whatever they can. So when you look at those three different personality types, you've got three potentially very different types of character. The fire starter, the one who is up in everyone's face and who promotes the idea of evil tieflings, the one who accepts it and tries to prove against it, and then the one who accepts it and apologizes for it and is basically just self-punishing and self-deprecating whenever they possibly can, because they have this complex, and rightfully so. Now, one of the important things that you need to bear in mind is that these complexes then don't translate into creating a bad type of character. You don't want to have the defeated character who's basically an Eeyore, just a depressed negative character throughout the entire game. They need to be defeated. They need to be accepting that their role should be in a bad place. And when a city guard orders that they stay out of city limits, they need to accept it with the humility and with the humbleness that has come of accepting their status. They don't need to fight the guard. They don't need to do anything along those sort of lines. Unless the party needs them to go with them into town, in which case then they should perhaps offer that the guard take their weapons, or that they wear handcuffs when they enter into the town. In other words, to find a workaround around this negative attitude. If the character is devilish and wants to promote the idea that tieflings are evil, you need to do so in a way that isn't going to jeopardize the party, because otherwise the party is going to get tired of this show-off who's really just out there to destroy themselves and to prove that they're evil, when they're probably not. So it's a character journey of trying to be this firebrand, this creature that fights back and does all of its dastardly things, but at the same time still helping its party, because it realizes that that family is very important. And of course, the one that's accepting but defiant can be accepting and defiant and work with the party. Of course, that makes the most sense. The critical thing, in my opinion, is that the tiefling comes from a space where the tieflings have to stick together. So there's a strong sense of community. But it's not just community of my family. It's not just those kinds of bonds which the other races have. It is the bond of difference. We are different from everybody else, so we stick together because of that difference. It's basically like a bunch of role players getting together at a weird convention. It's nice to be amongst your own kind, and so your tiefling needs to bear in mind and see the party as being that space, that safe space where they don't have to be necessarily a tiefling who's defensive, or a tiefling who's apologetic, or a tiefling who is aggressive. They can just relax and let their horns down. You then need to look at the idea of the history of your family. So this is not the character's history. The character's history you're free to create and to do as you like. But something that you have to include, which other races don't, is you need to have an idea of how your family got into this business in the first place. What was that pact? Who made it? Is it a mystery and you need to try and uncover it? Is it something that's just there? If I had in my family history someone who had made a pact with an all-powerful demon, I'd want to know what that pact was. Or perhaps I'd be a denialist and say I don't want to know what it is, because maybe I'll go down the same path and be as evil as my progenitor or the ancestor who got us into this mess in the first place. So that's something to bear in mind. Another thing to bear in mind is that they have tail and horns. This is something that often gets forgotten about. Horns are useful for all sorts of things. You can hang things on them. You can decorate them in very specific ways. I mean, if I look at my set of horns here, I could hang jewelry off of it. I could roast marshmallows on it potentially if I don't feel anything in my horns. And a tail, although there are not, although there are specific feats to have prehensile tails that allow you to manipulate everything, the idea here is that you do still have a tail. Now, even the most unbendable, rigid type of tail that you can imagine can still be used to poke or prod. And the book says the tail is 5 foot in length. That's quite a long appendage that could be used to slide stuff, to pull stuff. It could be a very important moment. Now, I had a player who was playing a tiefling, and a particular NPC that they antagonized cut his tail off. And it became such a moment for that poor player, for his character anyway, as it was a matter of pride that he no longer had a tail, and he had to try and get it back. And eventually he did, but it was a fantastic adventure that they went on, because it was part of the character. Something you must do is make it part of your character, is embrace the tail, use the tail, love the tail. Now, again, I've spoken about not being a loner. I'm just checking my notes here to make sure that I've gone through everything. Don't be a loner. Make sure that you stick with that party and that you've got this sense that you're going to work together. Use your one of the Ds, whatever one you happen to be. Try and look at how that influences your decisions. Try and role play out how it would feel to be in a society that looks down upon you as being a degenerate, someone that is inherently going to be mistrustworthy and who has no value in society. Try and place yourself in that situation when creating this tiefling to see what adventure options open up as you can explore this rather interesting species. Until next time, hit the like button if you like this, and if you want to see more sort of discussions around the different races. And I'm not just going to stick to races from Dungeons and Dragons. We'll look at races from science fiction if you so like, as we can explore and unpack all of these different things and how to look at them from slightly different angles, or to reaffirm the way that you are looking at them. Until next time, however, I wish you and yours the very happiest of playing.